Welcome, everyone. We are live tonight. It is Friday evening. Yes, it is. I trust that you had a great day, that you enjoyed yourself, that you watched yourself. But today was only day one of three because the weekend is here. And so, as the weekend progresses, we'll watch ourselves. But tonight, the interpretation from the Count of Monte Cristo. And this is through the lens of the principles of creation via Your Faith is Your Fortune by Neville Goddard. Let's pop over because we are on chapter 24 of Your Faith is Your Fortune. Clairvoyance. Count of Monte Cristo. Having eyes, see ye not, and having ears, hear ye not. And do ye not remember? Mark 8, verse 18. True clairvoyance rests not in your ability to see things beyond the range of human vision, but rather in your ability to understand that which you see. A financial statement can be seen by anyone, but very few can read a financial statement. The capacity to interpret the statement is the mark of clear seeing or clairvoyance. That every object, both animate and inanimate, is enveloped in a liquid light, which moves and pulsates with an energy far more radiant than the objects themselves. No one knows better than the author, but he also knows that the ability to see such auras is not equal to the ability to understand that which one sees in the world around about him. To illustrate this point, here is a story with which the whole world is familiar, yet only the true mystic or clairvoyant has ever really seen it. The synopsis: the story of Dumas, Count of Monte Cristo, is to the mystic and true clairvoyant the biography of every man. Edmond Dantes, a young sailor, finds the captain of his ship dead, and taking command of the ship in the midst of a storm swept sea, he attempts to steer the ship into a safe anchorage. Now, here's the commentary: life itself is a storm swept sea with which man wrestles as he tries to steer himself into a haven of rest. On Dantes is a secret document which must be given to a man he does not know, but who will make himself known to the young sailor in due time. This document is a plan to set the Emperor Napoleon free from his prison on the Isle of Elba. Here's the commentary. Within every man is the secret plan that will set free the mighty emperor within himself. As Dantes reaches port, three men who, by their flattery and praise, have succeeded in worming their way into the good graces of the present king. Fearing any change that would alter their positions in the government, they have the young mariner arrested and committed to the catacombs. Here's the commentary. Man, in his attempt to find security in this world, is misled by the false lights of greed, vanity, and power. Most men believe that fame, great wealth, or political power would secure them against the storms of life. So they seek to acquire these as the anchors of their life, only to find that in their search for these, they gradually lose the knowledge of their true being. If man places his faith in things other than himself, that in which his faith is placed will in time destroy him, at which time he will be as one imprisoned in confusion and despair. Now, here in this tomb, Dantes is forgotten and left to rot. Many years pass. Then one day, Dantes, who is by this time a living skeleton, hears a knock on his wall. Answering this knock, he hears the voice of one on the other side of the stone. In response to this voice, Dantes removes the stone and discovers an old priest who has been in prison so long that no one knows the reason for his imprisonment or the length of time he has been there. Here's the commentary. Here, behind these walls of mental darkness, man remains in what appears to be a living death. After years of disappointment, man turns from these false friends and he discovers within himself the ancient one, his awareness of being, who has been buried since the day he first believed himself to be man and forgot that he was God. The old priest had spent many years digging his way out of this living tomb, only to discover that he had dug his way into Dantes' tomb. He then resigns himself to his fate and decides to find his joy and freedom by instructing Dantes in all that he knows concerning the mysteries of life and to aid him to escape as well. Now, Dantes at first is impatient to inquire all this information, but the old priest, who, with infinite patience garnered through his long imprisonment, shows Dantes how unfit he is to receive this knowledge in his present unprepared, anxious mind. So, with philosophic calm, he slowly reveals to the young man the mysteries of life and time. Now, here's the commentary. This revelation is so wonderful that when man first hears it, he wants to acquire it all at once. But he finds that after numberless years spent in the belief of being man, he has so completely forgotten his true identity that he is now incapable of absorbing this memory all at once. He also discovers that he can do so only in proportion to his letting go of all human values and opinions. As Dantes ripens under the old priest's instructions, the old man finds himself living more and more in the consciousness of Dantes. Finally, he imparts his last bit of wisdom to Dantes, making him competent to handle positions of trust. He then tells him of an exhaustible treasure buried on the Isle of Monte Cristo. Commentary. As man drops these cherished human values, he absorbs more and more of the light, the old priest, until finally he becomes the light and knows himself to be the ancient one. I am the light of the world. At this revelation, the walls of the catacombs which separated them from the ocean above cave in, crushing the old man to death. The guards, discovering the accident, sew the old priest's body into a sack and prepare to cast it out to sea. As they leave to go get a stretcher, Dantes removes the body of the old priest and sews himself into the bag. The guards, unaware of his change of bodies or of this change of bodies, and believing him to be the old man, throw Dantes into the water. Commentary. The flowing of both blood and water in the death of the old priest is comparable to the flow of blood and water from the side of Jesus as the Roman soldiers pierced him. The phenomenon, which always takes place at birth, here symbolizing the birth of a higher consciousness. Now, Dantes frees himself from the sack. He goes to the Isle of Monte Cristo and discovers the buried treasure. Then, armed with this fabulous wealth and this superhuman wisdom, he discards his human identity of Edmond Dantes and assumes the title of the Count of Monte Cristo. Commentary. Man discovers his awareness of being to be the inexhaustible treasure of the universe. In that day, when man makes this discovery, he dies as man and awakes as God. Yes, Edmond Dantes becomes the Count of Monte Cristo. Man becomes Christ. Let's talk about this because that's the end of the chapter. I know you have questions. If you have questions, I know we're on fan base, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Sweetie, are you okay? Oh, are you okay? Do you need some help? Sorry, I'm just talking to my rooster. He's right next to me. But let's go back because we have to understand what clairvoyance really is. Clairvoyance is your ability to understand what you see. Animal lover, no, we're not reading the Bible per se. There is scripture sprinkled throughout this book. This book is called Your Faith is Your Fortune by Neville Goddard. And so he speaks here in chapter 24 about the Count of Monte Cristo. And so he gives commentary. Because if you have seen the Count of Monte Cristo, you see the love, you see the betrayal, you see the reinstating of all that was lost, even more so than that which was lost. But we get so caught up in the story that we do not see the hidden meaning in it. Because he says the story of Edward, I can't even say his name, Edmund Dumas, the Count of Monte Cristo. It is the true clairvoyant, the biography of every man. Every man goes through this exact same thing. How so? Life itself is a storm-swept sea with which man wrestles as he tries to steer himself to a haven of rest. Which means when you hear storm-swept sea, think about this for a moment. He dies for the first time as he's rowed out to sea and taken to um, the prison. But now he is resurrected as he is thrown into the water yet again. You see it? He dies the first time he goes into prison, but he's made alive when he comes out. You see that part? So we may enter a thing. We may go through these situations, these storm swept situations in life. And we steer and we wrestle ourselves just so we can have a bit of rest. But within each and every one of us lies a secret. Man doesn't know there's a secret within him. Man doesn't know. So this is why the commentary says, within every man is the secret plan that will set free the mighty emperor within himself. Oh, but Angela, that has nothing to do with Napoleon. You're not looking at Napoleon. You are looking at what Napoleon represents. The hidden. Because he was banished, right? So we in our lives, we allow greed, vanity, and power is what it says in the commentary, to blind us. And we think that fame and great wealth or political power would secure them against the storms of life. And this is why man seeks to acquire these things to anchor himself to them. Because if you think if you have money, you're safe. If the money leaves you, does your safety leave with the money? So this is why you're hearing not to anchor yourself in things. You anchor yourself in the principle. Now, what is that principle? All things are possible to God. And where is God? Within. Within who, you ask? Why, God is within you. There's not many gods running around. There's 8 billion people, yes, but there's one God inside of all 8 billion. Because there is only one I am. So, if you listen to the commentary, right, we're looking for all these things to anchor ourselves into. So you see, as we go through life, we forget. We are buried in the tomb of our quote unquote our trauma, all the things we've gone through. We're buried in it. So much so that you forget who you are. You notice how if you watch the movie, his beard grew out, his hair got all shaggy. He was a shadow of his former self. That's what he was. But we all do it. Our trauma, the things we worry about, the things we fret about, they one by one they bury us beneath them. But if we would remember that we are not buried beneath problems, we rise above problems. You notice how when he first is thrown in prison, there's a saying etched on the wall, right? And the part, because it's not that I didn't like the movie, I did, but uh, I knew it ended. It had a happy ending, but there's still some things I couldn't handle in the movie. That line, and he says, "God will bring me justice. God will rescue me," or something along those lines. And the jailer says, "Okay, I'm gonna whip you." And you call for God. When God comes, I'll stop whipping you. That hurt me to hear it because it is what we do. We keep looking to the outside for God to come and rescue us. And this is why we become disillusioned, just like he did. God did not show up to rescue him because the jailer said, "Okay, when God shows up, I'll stop whipping you." Whoo! And that was not an easy whip. And every time I heard that whip hit flesh, it was like, ooh, I just couldn't take it. So, but I didn't fast forward through it. I said, you know what, Angela, just focus. So if you look at the bigger picture, we become disillusioned with God only because we have placed God outside of ourselves. To say, oh, God, save me. But God's not outside of you. That's why God couldn't, quote unquote, show up to rescue him. Because there's this one part. Let me, one moment, please. Hi, sweetie. You need a hand? Okay, I'll help you. Good boy. I got you. There you go. You're welcome. Sorry, he was struggling a little bit. So we become disillusioned with God because we have God on the outside and we're crying out to God and it's falling on deaf ears. Not that God can't hear you, but if you looked at the movie and you saw, that's what he did. So that's why that line was so pivotal. When God shows up, I'll stop. So God did not show up. Thus, he was whipped, right? He was beaten. But if now you fast forward to the spot in the movie where the old priest dies and the camera zooms in on Edmond Dantes. I love his name. But the camera zooms in and the light of recognition comes on in his eyes. And so he decides to swap. He assumed the body of the priest by getting into the bag and sewing himself up. So to all intents and purposes, he died. He was dead. Which is everything that prison represented. All the pain, the betrayal, listen, the trauma. When he put himself in that bag, he died to it. He died to it. Whatever he left behind, he died to it. You notice he did not forget because that was one of the last scenes in the movie. He was on top of the precipice of the plateau looking out onto the sea because he purchased the prison. So you see, we don't forget our trauma. We don't forget our pain that has happened to us. But we look at it differently. How was he looking at it differently? He was looking at it through the lens of the Count of Monte Cristo. He was no longer Edmond Dumas. He had assumed that role so much. Edmond Dumas assumed the role of the Count of Monte Cristo. The attitude. He left behind everything that was in that prison. He left it. But here's the part to capture as well. Our human nature. Oh, he was driven by revenge. He wanted to destroy his enemies. Oh, you see where his humanity is? But then, in the midst of seeking his revenge, the first one, he threw the man off the boat and he was hanging. And he says, cut him down before he can't speak. And then in the other one, the 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 clerk of the court, he had him arrested and he put him in the carriage for jail, for prison, and he left the gun on the seat. Spoiler, the gun was unloaded. And he said, what, you think I'd let you get off that easy? You think I'd make it easy for you? So we as humanity want justice. We do. But look at what happened when he realized the cost. He had to defend his life now. So he ended up having to kill his traitor. Not saying, here's the thing, the traitor that he kills was his old memories. Not a human. It took the face of a human, but it was not human. It just was all the things that he had gone through. He had to put it to death, or else it would come back to haunt him. It would never let him rest. So when he came out of that prison, he died once by sewing himself into the bag of the old priest. And he was resurrected as the Count of Monte Cristo. But then, in order to continually live as the Count of Monte Cristo, he had to put to death the past, which embodied his old best friend. So it's not that he was killing another person, it is the personification, it is the symbology. Is this making sense to you tonight as having seen the movie? Because, well, go ahead. But that's exactly it. By the third year, he didn't even scream anymore. Flo Smiles, go ahead. Ask your question or share what it is, because this one is open for discussion tonight, because it's a movie and what we want to learn how to do. Because every time you see a movie, people say, oh my God, they're telling you right in front of your face and we're not even seeing it. Because we are caught up in the glitz and the glamour. But what we don't see is ourselves. Look for yourself. Go ahead, Flo Smiles.
Um, what I was gonna say, I saw the 1975 version and the 2002 version, and they were similar but different. The ending was different. The 75 version, he didn't get his wife because he was so riddled with revenge. And once he finished, he was like, I have nothing left. And she was like, you're not the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she didn't even want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the second version, I liked it better because, like you said, when he was fighting his best friend, when he found out that was his son, he was like, you know what? I don't even want to do this no more.
Yep.
And he let him go. But then his friend was like, no, I can't let you go. And then I liked another part in the movie when when he asked his friend, why did he do him like that?
Mm-hmm.
And he told him, because I'm not supposed to want to be you.
Yep. Yep. So we look at it now. And I haven't seen the 1975 version, but the way you described it, yeah, that line.
Yeah, I wasn't finished. Wait a minute. One more
Yep.
thing. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Um, when he stopped, when he realized that his revenge was really killing him. Like, oh, it was going to kill him, and he was going to lose everything he loved. But then that's when his friend came back and was like, "I can't let you have
Mhm.
everything."
Yes. Yes. And you see, with that friend, that old friend who betrayed him, though you can liken those unto our habits and the things that we do and how we speak to ourselves because they're so close to us. And we always push against them, the old self. But the reason why I like the 2002 version is because it shows you that everyone can be redeemed. Whereas in the 1975 version, based on the way you explained it, he was pretty much well destroyed by his own revenge. So we do the same thing as humanity. And that's the part, if we would, if you look at the story, how can he possibly forget 13 years of prison when he was beaten on the anniversary every year? And he's wearing the scars on his back, which is showing you you will always have those scars on your back. But at the end of the day, you die to them. They no longer determine who and what you are anymore. The memory is not going to go away. Just like I said, the scars on his back didn't go away. You see the symbology? Our trauma leaves marks on us. They don't go away because you see the marks every day. But what we do determine is who we say we now are. And he assumed the role of the Count of Monte Cristo. No longer Edmond Dumas. No longer. So you see, as we go through life, this is exactly the principle we're talking about. Nobody's telling you that your life is perfect and you didn't suffer things. That's not what anybody's saying. But what is being shown to you in this movie is that you can go through any storm, yet you can come out as the captain of your own ship, meaning you can come out as ruler of your own life and your own existence because you're seeing yourself for what you really are, as opposed to what prison made you become or what life made you become. Go ahead, Flow Smiles.
Another thing I like that I saw was, like you said, what life made you become. Because when he was so riddled with revenge in that one, the 1975 version, he once he finished what he had to do, he felt like he had no other purpose. He didn't even know what to do.
I'm glad you said that because that's what happens to us as humanity. We get so caught up in the fight that if you take the fight away, people lose their purpose. Now, let me equate, don't come for me, but let me equate it to this. People have spent so much time fighting against systemic racism and all kinds of injustices that if you take that fight away, no reason, they have no reason to exist. At least that's how they feel, that their purpose is gone. So this is why it's important to remember not to lose yourself in your trauma. You don't lose yourself in it, but you die. You die to it. Which means what? It doesn't mean you take your life. It means you look at the situation and you say, I came in as Edmond Dumas. I am leaving now as the Count of Monte Cristo. And when you leave as the Count of Monte Cristo, your memories don't leave you, but you walk daily in what you say you are now, the Count of Monte Cristo. That's what you're saying you are. So how does the Count move in the world? The Count moves in the world with surety of self, with confidence. And let me tell you, it didn't come from the gold that he found, you know. It came from what he learned from that trauma for 13 years. He learned things. Because if memory serves me correctly, he could not read. Do you see the symbology there? He couldn't read, which meant he could not see clearly. He could not comprehend what was happening to him in his life because he was not clairvoyant. He did not have clear seeing. Go ahead, Flow Smiles.
I liked when he was in there with the priest, and he gave the priest purpose. Like the priest got to teach him things, and he called him his son because he had never had one. So I like that part.
Yes, yes. Do you do you see the symbology of that though? Of that he was a priest because of the inner guidance is normally seen as a higher self or something that represents God within. And so this is why he personified the role as priest. And if you think about it, he died and saved Dumas. He was Dumas's savior. So you see the symbology. Your savior is within you. And that is why that line in the movie will ever haunt me. When God shows up, I'll stop beating you. That line. Because when he understood that he was God and you saw the light go on, ooh, and he sewed himself into that body bag, what? He knew. He knew what he was. And then he became his own savior, as which we all do, because you're your savior. Because if you think about it, had he had not learned in there, if he had a just continued, and I want you to see the symbology. When he was at his lowest, that's when he heard the knocking, isn't it? He heard the knocking on the tiles below, the stones below. And from within the ground, this priest emerged. Yes, go ahead, Flo Smile.
That's another thing I had noticed too. He had stopped looking outside of him. He stopped etching into that God will give me justice. He had just stopped etching into it when he heard that noise.
Well, there is the solution. He turned his attention away from etching his problem. He was focused on the injustice. That's why he was seeking justice, because he was focused on the injustice and he kept digging into the groove over and over and over again. And when he stopped and he took his attention away from outside and just rested, that is when the priest within emerged to teach. So when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That is the symbology of that scene in the prison cell. When the student is ready, the teacher emerges. He was ready when he stopped. When he stopped fighting, he was ready. And thus the teacher within emerged. That scene right there is the personification of Confucius when he said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or when the student is ready, the master appears. And that's exactly what happened. So we can learn from that when we apply it to our own lives. What is it that we keep etching into all the time and going over and over and over all the time in our mind's eye? What is it that we're doing? You see? And we and we think that um listen, there's no shame in it because we all do it. Every single one of us does it. Only because we don't know that we should take our attention away from the problem and rest a moment. He just rested there. And in his silence, he wore himself out. He couldn't be frustrated anymore. So when you stop being frustrated, which means you stop fighting, ah, beware of what will appear to teach you. So you see, the Count of Monte Cristo is far deeper than we think it is. But you notice the Son bears witness to the Father, as within, so without. All of his good qualities that were in him were shown in the qualities of his Son. Or did we miss that part? Huh. It's just an observation. There was a Son, right? And if we look at it, we'll see he bears witness. I remember the first time I saw it, and I didn't know, I didn't guess, but I said, this seems a little convenient. And then I started to look at him. He had the same hair, he had the same build, kind of sort of thing. And I was like, wait, but that's his son. And I only ever saw it from that perspective, but it just dawned on me that when we are talking about spirituality or Christianity, the Son, which is the expression of what is within. So all that was good within him was shown to him by way of his Son and his Son's attitude towards life. So all of that he saw in his Son was what he was on the inside. And he had to see it to be reminded, oh, wait, I'm not this bitter old coot bent on revenge. And that is the part where now, if we would look upon the Count of Monte Cristo, look at it. It is you. It is me. We all live these experiences. And this is why the scars on his back will stand out, because the scars in our lives, the things that we've experienced, they're not easily forgotten because we have the remnants of them every day. But you have to make a choice. You will either live and continually carving into the rock, God will give me justice, or you will begin to see that you are God. Good night, viewing pleasure. It's good to see you. Um, but does that make sense? Are there any questions about what we saw in that movie that you wanted expansion on? Because it really was a great movie. It really was. And if you, I remember movies very vividly because they leave an impression on me, right? You know that Matrix is one of mine, the whole Matrix series, you know that. But this one, after seeing it again, it hit me differently because back in the day, I just liked it because, well, I didn't like it. I just, it was hard to watch because to me, the brutality. But if you put it in perspective, right? It is you. You and I will go through things. We just will. We will encounter, we will experience things. But, pardon me, but always remember that he was not imprisoned forever, just like what seemed like forever. His freedom was imminent. Why? Because from the moment he turned his attention away from that wall and seeking justice and revenge, is when the priest popped up like a mole burrowing underground. That's when he popped up, right? So, what did we learn from that? Remove your attention away from your problem, and in that silent space, You are awakened.
To my business.
Yeah, Flo Smiles?
I'm sorry, my son grabbed my phone.
It's okay. Um, but I trust that now when you watch it again, if you choose to, look at your life. You're not looking at your life in comparison to quote unquote a movie. Look at the symbology. Everything is a symbol, you know. Why do you think we build logos? Everything is a symbol. The symbol represents something. So look for the symbology. Look at where you bear the scars. Look at it. But then also look at your freedom. Look at your outcome. Look at what you get to do. You get to assume the identity of who you say you are. So do that faithfully. You see, the same faithfulness with which he was rubbing in that wall, God will give me justice. The same reason, and that was willpower, you know? Every day to get up and write in that wall, that was willpower. But the moment he turned himself from using his willpower, because it is exhausting to use willpower, but he turned his attention away from it. And in turning his attention away from the problem, and just, he didn't turn himself away from the problem towards a solution. Not yet. Look at it and you'll see. He turned himself away from his problem to just be. That's all he did. He turned away from his problems to just be. And in his beingness, God emerged. The priest represents God. Well, look at what happened. He came up through the ground, so he emerged. So that is our cue to understand that the moment we get still, something emerges from within us to guide us and to teach us. And all we get to do is listen and apply. Listen, every day that he was taught, he applied. Every day that he was taught, he learned and he applied. Because if you'll notice, it was every day that the old priest reminded him of his freedom. The priest reminded him of his freedom. So your inner consciousness, which is you, I am, reminds you of your own freedom. Does it not? And it is always gently pulling you. And then it seems to die. I want to make this clear. It appears to die. So that's why the priest had to die, right? Because it goes silent for a little bit and it appears to die. But after he was thrown over the cliff into the water, he had to rise again. So the priest only appeared to die, but now the priest became part of Edmond Dumas. So that when Edmond Dumas rose again, he rose as God. Yes. That's why he died. Because two of them can't go, only one can go. Because there's only one. So he submerged himself. How did he submerge himself into Edmond Dumas? By teaching Edmond Dumas. That is how Edmond became the priest. That's how he became the priest. By learning what the priest taught him. So after he learned everything that the priest taught him, did he need the priest on the outside anymore? No, because he had him within now. So everything that we see on the outside, if we would always go back to recognize it is within us, it's not two, there's just one. And so that's what was so beautiful, you know? Well, Flow Smiles, that's exactly it. When you hear people say, man, I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Not because their willpower has been exhausted. And the only thing now to do is sit there and wait. But this is I don't want to use the word hope because we don't deal in hope. But here's what happens when you watch that movie. It tells you no matter how deep you go, remember how deep underground they were. No matter how deep you go in your darkness, God is always with you. The priest was always there, just below. Think about it, just below. The priest was always there, just below where consciousness. The priest had to rise, which is to come up that hole so that Edmond could become aware of him. So Edmond had to become aware of what he was on the inside, which is the priest. So that story, if you see how things get hidden, and they stay hidden so long as we keep looking for the outside. But if you look at the story as yourself, you'll begin to see, oh my goodness, you'll begin to see. Does this make sense? Because I know it seems like a lot, but that's why both of them could not leave. Because it's telling you the priest is within. He rose up from the depths of Edmond. That's why he came out of the ground. He was under the surface, under his consciousness, under his awareness. That's why Edmond didn't know he was there until he made himself known in Edmond's consciousness. So it's telling you you have to become aware of what is within you, which is who you are. And when you become aware of who and what you are, you now learn because you're being taught. Hmm. Listen, I hope and trust that when you watch it again, when you watch any movie, watch the movie through the lens of, oh, well, this is me. And you'll notice you could look at depression, right? Depression is deep and it is dark, like the bowels of that prison. So much so that you forget yourself and your own existence. You're just so identified with the dark and the gloom and not being able to get out of it. But how did he get out? You see, he didn't get out because he, he forced anything, but he got out because he had to become aware of something other than what he was. He had to become aware of what was within, which is the priest, which is God. So he had to become aware of God within. And when you become aware of God within, well, now you're saved. Well, look at the priest. The priest taught him everything that he knew. The priest taught him everything that he knew. Everything. So he absorbed the priest. Either way you look at it, he became one with the priest. So we must become one with what we say we are and what we discover ourselves to be. So, anywho, are there any more questions or um, comments that anybody wants to ask about if you've seen the movie? Okay, dance. Well, watch it again. See what you learned this time when you put yourself in the shoes of Edmond Dumas. But don't get it twisted. You are all those characters. You are all those characters. The fiance. You're the fiance. Edmond left an impression upon the fiance, did he not? He left an impression. And you see, Sometimes it may look like somebody is getting what you think you deserve, or you might think somebody's getting what you want, or you may feel like somebody's trying to take it from you, but that is not the case. Because he assumed, you see, let's look at the character, but remember all of the characters are you. You notice how the best friend, what was that line? Flo Smiles, I'm not supposed to want to be you. So he was envious because this Edmond had nothing. Edmond came from nothing. Edmond was nothing, right? But here he is. He was born with a silver spoon and a lap of luxury, and he had to take a shot. He literally speaking, he took a shot at Edmond and say, "This is whatever." He described his blood that ran through his veins, and Edmond will just always be Edmond because he's common, right? So even in Edmond's commonness, even in his commonness, he assumed the state of the Count of Monte Cristo, thereby excelled himself above the man who was so-called born into it. But you see how it is? You see what we do? We have to rise above our own limitations. So the best friend personified his limitations. He felt he wasn't good enough. He had to wait for all these years to get money to marry her. He felt inadequate. If you watch the movie, you'll see it again. He felt inadequate. But when he assumed the role of the Count of Monte Cristo, he walked into that bathhouse, that sauna bathhouse, and he took control of the situation. And he turned up the steam and he made him confess. Not through force, but he made him confess nonetheless, right? So, what that signifies is he went from being weak in his own eyes to being strong in the eyes of the Count of Monte Cristo. I trust it makes sense to you. Watch it again for the first time. Yes, I shouldn't want to be you. He was jealous and envious, and he had no reason to be. But those are our shortcomings as humanity. We get jealous and envious because we do not know that we are the Count of Monte Cristo. We don't know it because we're busy etching into stone that which we are displeased of being. We give it our full attention, our full focus. That's what we do. We give it that. But in actuality, what is required is, who do you say you are? And walk as such. So I trust it makes sense. Watch it again and see what you pick up this time from a different perspective. Watch it again and see. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'm just making a suggestion because from here on in, it doesn't matter what movie you see. See yourself in the starring role, and you will learn much more than you've ever hoped to learn about the self. Anywho, practice going into the silence on your own as you contemplate tonight, as you when you put your head on your pillow. Contemplate what this movie actually meant. Begin to look and see where the similarities are in your own life, and be encouraged to know that it's not that it didn't matter what he went through. And how do you know? Because the scars were there. The scars were there. So you can't belittle what you've been through. Accept it. So that every time you turn to look at your back in the mirror, you see what you've been through. Of course. But then assume the role of the Count of Monte Cristo. Assume that role. Listen, you can be the Countess if you want, but assuming that role, hmm, walk in it. Because think about what's going to happen to you when you start walking in what it is you are. You see how all those people went to the ball? See how all those people wanted to get to know him? Who is the Count of Monte Cristo? Ooh, the mystery, the intrigue. They all wanted to know him. So when you are assuming that new role, you got to do it with conviction. He could not walk into that. Listen, this man made an entrance. He came down from the sky in a balloon. God descended into the midst of man. He didn't walk in like a grasshopper. So, see it again for the first time if you wish. See what see what you can glean from it. You know who you are in spite of all of the hardship, right? Anywho, we won't do 5 minutes of silence tonight. That is for you to practice now on your own. Practice it as you gently contemplate. Well, where am I in Dumas? Am I keeping myself locked in that prison? And it's a mental prison. Are you keeping yourself locked there? Hmm. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. From Your Faith is Your Fortune, chapter 24, The Count of Monte Cristo. And I'm glad that I think you have a true understanding of it now. Remember what the word clairvoyance means. It just means clear seeing. Well, clairaudience would be hearing clearly, but what are we hearing? Hmm. Begin to comprehend what you are hearing. Hmm. That, like, I'm so serious. That one line got me. When God shows up, I'll stop beating you. Ah, I didn't cry, but it hurt me to hear it. Why did it hurt me to hear it? Because that is what you and I, as humanity, that's what we do. We cry out to God on the outside. But this movie, The Count of Monte Cristo, will tell you God is within. Countdown initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go forth into this weekend and assume the role of the Count of Monte Cristo. Mm. Much love to each and every one of you who's here tonight. Well, you know, Twitter, it is what it is. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, viewing pleasure, animal lover, um, and PTK ZUCC. I don't know, but he was here in the space as well. Moon and Dolphin Duck, Leg and Music. Welcome to the space. Ray Ray, welcome to the space. Casey. That deal and Flo Smiles. Thank you all for being here. And Monday we will continue. Um, I'm trusting because I really want to do that meditation room on Mondays, just for my subscribers, like my members on YouTube. So if you're a member on Fanbase, uh, I'll send you the link for it because I won't do it for the public on my YouTube channel. But I'll just use, regular stuff. But I don't want to share it with the public because not everybody's ready at this time. But for those of you who are ready and you want to be a part of it, so long as Monday's drive home isn't like it was today, like that snow sure makes everything go so slowly. Right? So that we could have that. It'll be 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to be a part of that, just slide into my DMs. And it's just straight meditation to simply feel. Nothing else. You're not doing anything special. Nothing like that. Just where we build our foundation. And that's on Mondays, every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to be a part of it, let me know. And I'll send you off a link because it's private, right? And I'll send you a link. Um, Tomorrow, we are on Fanbase from 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. We got three classes tomorrow on Fanbase 3 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Eastern. And on Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, you do know that we will pick up again on chapter 25. Let me see if I can give you a little snippet of chapter 25. Chapter 25, the 23rd Psalm. Wouldn't you know? I've been saying that line for like the past week. Like the whole day, I've been saying that line just to myself. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. You know why you don't want? Because you are. And when you are, there's no void. And if there's no void, there's nothing to want. The Lord is my shepherd. Shepherd? Yes. As within, so without. But that's what it says, my awareness is my Lord and shepherd. And that which I am aware of being is the sheep that follow me. You see, when we hear, you'll know one another by your fruit, it is the same principle. My sheep know my voice and they follow me, but we'll know you by your fruit as well. Same thing. So that'll be where we pick up on Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Chapter 25, Psalm 23. Anywho, I do love you all. And I thank you for spending this time with me. And a little bit, I think, has finally settled down. he was he was a little anxious, but he's since settled down now. Um, but I will look forward to seeing you on Monday for chapter 25. I look forward to it. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to slide into my DMs and let me know, and I'll answer your questions. Not because I know everything or not that I know anything, I just know the principles because I practice them every day. I live by them every day. So I'm learning them more and more every day. And we should all do the same to learn about ourselves, to understand ourselves, right? And as we know ourselves, we will know God. It is inevitable. All right, y'all. Mm. Much love to each and every one of you. Good night.